Aloha, and please enjoy the virtual field day for the low elevation tolerant Leucospermum variety trial.
So yeah, we're a 5-acre farm. The property is kind of a square. We're standing sort of in one side / corner of it. This is the research block over here. That side will be the production side. Oh gosh, I don't even know where to start now. Where did we leave off? Irrigation? Or should we start with, why don't we start with establishment and how we chose to do what we're doing with the weed mat and the grass. So originally we had planned on being an organic farm. We've since abandoned that idea, but with that in mind, what we were doing is we had established weed mat where the plants were gonna go, and then we were just mowing the guinea grass in the middle for a very long time, the first probably 1.5 years. This grass came in about like 6 months ago. The reason we decided to get rid of the guinea grass was a couple of different things. One, I just don't like it. It's prickly and it's not fun to deal with. In the spring, it grows really rapidly and it leaves a lot of plant material on the surface, which can be good and maybe in some instances, but not for this crop. What we were seeing is as we were going through and mowing, it was throwing all kinds of grass and material at the base of the plant. So as we were mowing, we were having to come in later and leaf blow it off, because if you leave all that material, it starts to cause rot and other issues with the plants. So we ditched the organic thing, we sprayed it out, we established this. It's a variety of Bermuda grass. It's also something that we wanted to do was just kind of focus on different aspects of sustainability on the farm. So the protea don't use a lot of water, and this grass doesn't use a lot of water. So the idea behind this was that we would get it established and then stop watering it. Other people had asked us why we didn't try using like perennial peanut. It's a lot, prettier and nicer, but it needs more water. Also, it can come underneath the weed mat and come up in the plant hole. And because it's also a broadleaf, we wouldn't have any selective herbicides to kill it off that wouldn't potentially impact the plant. What we have, the tool that we have at our disposal with the grass is a product called Fusilade. So if we wanted to kill off the grass, if it becomes an issue where it's growing around the base of the plant, we can use that and we won't hurt the plant. So that's what we decided to do in terms of ground cover and management. What other questions do you have? Come on, yeah.
Why beds across the slope versus?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we're pretty slopey here, and erosion was a concern. We did implement no-till practices. I won't talk too much about that unless people have an interest in it, but my background in soils and climate led me to want to try to do this without tilling the soil. For those of you who weren't here when I said this earlier, this parcel of land has been undisturbed since the 80s, so we felt like we didn't want to come in and just rip it up and potentially lead to more erosion. So so we decided to plant across the slope to kind of help deal with what would otherwise have been potentially an issue with erosion. So we went across the slope. We changed directions over there, basically because there's sort of a big, historically there was a drainage area through here. Since we set up our fields, that road up there has changed and water no longer flows this direction. So it's kind of a moot point now, but yeah, so that's why we set up the blocks in this direction. What else?
How much do you water?
Yes, how much do we irrigate? So we set up the irrigation system. Now, you guys, most of you presumably have farms, and so you know what it's like dealing with strange irrigation systems and potentially intermittent water availability. At this site, our system, when we first started the farm, the water was available intermittently. So we would have water, and then we would have like no water for 3, 4, 5 days, and we wouldn't know. No one would say anything. They're like, oh, the filter broke and we shut it down and we haven't had water for a couple days. So with that in mind, we set up a system where we could irrigate every day. Not ideal for these plants, but this is what worked for us because we were establishing new plants. So we gave them a little bit of water every day. That way, if we missed 3 or 4 days, if the system was down, they wouldn't completely dry out. If you have reliable water, what's probably better is to do less frequent, deeper waterings. It'll help with the root system development and prevent things like this from happening. You guys can come over if you want. You can kind of see a little better. So again, in the name of water conservation, we ended up implementing a system like this where we have these individual drip emitters. So these put out 1 gallon per hour, and it's very directed at the base of the plant. So something I have learned and would do differently and will do differently over there is I will not leave this system in place for much longer, or for very long. I would say when you feel like your plants are established, change your system out. So what this does is it just directs the water right here, and so it doesn't really encourage the roots to spread very far. That said, the weed mat does hold some moisture, so it's likely that the roots have spread out a little bit, but this is not the most ideal system for plants of this age. So these are like 2.5 years old now, 2.5 years old. I would probably change it out by like a year. So that said, the amount that we're irrigating, I've been playing around with it. So one of the other things I mentioned to a few people in the group earlier is it's a little bit difficult to really dial it in for this crop because there's so many different varieties here. So some might like a little bit more or a little bit less water. Some might like a little bit different, combination of fertilizers, and things like that. We're still figuring that out, and until we pick the ones that are going on our production side, I probably won't have like an exact, science to it. That said, we did install a tensiometer, which basically measures soil moisture and kind of tells you where you're at, about a year ago. So we've been using that to kind of guide us to make sure we're not overwatering. So in the winter, at times I turn it off. So this has actually been off for about 10 days because we had 2 big rainfall events. And I did not want to over-irrigate these because we do have disease pressure in the field. So if you've got disease pressure, if you're over-irrigating, especially in the spring when things are growing really fast, it's really hot, it's really humid, it's like prime time for fungal issues. So we turned it off for those rainfall events. We'll turn it back on probably later this week. But in the summer, when it's very dry, we're not getting a lot of rain in this particular environment, I'm changing it to irrigating twice a week, longer, deeper rounds. I was irrigating 3-4 days a week. As the irrigation system that we're using in this farm subdivision or subdevelopment, whatever, has become more stable, it's reliable now, we can decrease the amount of waterings per week, and so that's what we're doing. And I would say right now I'm trying to do roughly 3 to 4 hours, so 3 to 4 gallons per plant per week. And that seems to be good for right now. But if we get a really big rainfall event, we turn it off. If last winter, we actually had this really strange thing happen. So in December of 2021, there was a really big rainfall event and we lost probably 10 to 15% of our plants. And I think we were irrigating too much prior to that event, and then that happened. We didn't catch it right away, and we're still on that same irrigation schedule. We hadn't tailored it back yet, and I think it was just too much water. So that was a big learning experience for us. It was kind of a bummer. And it wasn't really specific to any variety or really any one place in the field, which was very strange. So it was a little bit hard to kind of figure out exactly what happened or what caused. I mean, we know what caused it, but I don't know which fungal pathogen it was. So yeah, another just sort of lessons learned. Just don't over irrigate because you'll have more issues with diseases. And the plants just don't like it. When they're generally an unhappy or an unhealthy plant, tends to get more issues with diseases and pests anyway. So yeah. Yeah, so it's kind of a long answer for how much to irrigate, but I would say in the winter we were aiming for maybe 2 gallons a week or something, and in the summer up to 4 to 6 gallons, something like that per plant. So, and then also, I mentioned we were going to change the irrigation system. So rather than having one drip at the base of the plant, we're kind of weighing out 2 different options right now. So actually 3. So what I'm thinking of doing is adding a second dripper and just moving it down and having 2, and then just making sure it's under the weed mat so that it's spread out a little bit further to encourage the roots to grow out. I mean, in terms of water conservation, that's probably the best thing we can do. But in terms of encouraging deeper, or not necessarily deeper, but roots that'll spread more widely, there's probably other things that would be better. What I've seen pictures of people on Maui doing is they've got what looks like 2 drip tubes running on either side of the plant going underneath the weed mat. That's probably ideal if you have enough water pressure, if your water's not too dirty, and if your water's very cheap. Those are probably good options. What I'm most concerned about with here, our water's kind of dirty, but I'm actually concerned about root intrusion from the grass.
When you say the water's dirty, you mean there's like sediment?
Yeah, the filter's not maintained very well, so yeah. So if we do these, we haven't had issues with these, but the drip tubing that we have to establish the grass, I mean, it's less than 3 months, and when I open them up, it's just floods of mud coming out. So it's just dirty. As much as we try to clean our stuff on the farm, it just comes in. So I mean, I think there are things you can do, like you can flush the ends of the tubes frequently and deal with that. But what I don't know if we could control is, I don't know if we could stop the grass from growing in the drip tube. So I don't know if we'll do that. The third option that I would like to do, but I don't know if I have the budget for, is to get Netafim tubing. And they actually have, it's a brand, and they make tubing that will not let roots go inside. And that's probably the best option, but it's very expensive. So yeah. Gonna have to see.
Another grant.
Yeah, I know, right? I was doing the math and I'm like, I need 20,000 feet of tubing. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. So I don't know, we'll see. We haven't decided exactly for sure what we'll do over there yet, but.
Can I ask you a quick question? The way the plant kind of flops over and crawls, that's a natural?
No, so in trying to figure out what's going on here, there's, again, probably 3 different things, and maybe Ken, you might chime in too and let me know what you think, but this is what I think. So we sampled the soil where we were seeing this because there were a couple of plants around the field that had tipped over, and I thought maybe it was root knot nematode. When we did get the results back, they said it was spiral nematode, which I don't know. I don't know that much about spiral nematode other than it's prolific in grass-dominated ecosystems, so it makes sense that there's a lot of it here because this was all guinea grass, and it prevents root growth. So there was a OMRI certified product that we got and applied all over, and we'll probably put it down excuse me, we'll put it down on that side when we first put our plants in and just apply it right from the start so that if they're an issue over there, I'm sure they are, we'll handle it from the get-go.
Do you have the product name?
I will find out. I've got it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I will let you know.
Do you know
yeah.
for sure that Protea or Leucospermum are host to that nematode?
I don't know. All I know is I sampled around the plants that were impacted. The other thing that I think could be happening is the irrigation, just having it directed right at the base like that. It's not encouraging the roots to grow out far enough. Also, and this is a whole nother discussion, we can start talking about pruning anytime you guys are ready, but we have not pruned anything. And I think some of them are a little top heavy, and I think pruning would probably help.
One thing I did notice in the very beginning was there was a large amount of blown over plants, even at a young age.
Yeah.
So the wind is a big factor, and just in general, root strength, the ability for it to hold up the plants is an issue that needs to be considered in production, especially I think in soils that can get really wet and then allow for the plants to be blown over in wind events, and in general for Protea.
Yeah. Someone had mentioned too, seeing this, they're like, well, that looks pot bound. I don't know how long some of these were in the pots for, but that's also possible. We didn't propagate these ourselves, so I'm not sure. But it's not an issue around the whole farm, so I don't know.
I propagated them.
Yeah. Do you think they were pot bound?
Not unlikely.
Yeah.
I
didn't think so, but
you got most of them at a pretty young age.
Like they weren't that big when we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an issue with Protea growers everywhere. You see this, and I think when it comes, I think it's avoidable. I think what you need to do is grow your rooted cutting, grow it in if you're going to use a 4-inch pot, don't use the standard 4-inch pot that's 4 inches deep. Use one that's 20 inches deep,
like the
or
tree
a foot
pot.
deep. What are they called?
Like the tree pots?
Yeah, I'm not sure what they call them, dibble tubes.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was a young boy, I was doing propagations I grew up in a citrus area, and we didn't have these kind of pots back then, but they said it's so important to grow your seedling as deep as possible. They would graft on top of that. And so what we did was we got roofing paper, and we made rolls of it, and so we cut it into 1 foot or even 18 inches, and it's only like 4 or 5 inches top, and to tie it. So you had, with roofing paper, we had these cylinders, and we would grow the plants, and they didn't want to take the plants for grafting until they saw roots coming out the bottom, okay, that deep. And if you use, now we have pots like that, blow pots and others. And I think if you grow your material in the nursery with a deep root system like that, you can avoid this kind of problem. I didn't do that.
Do you think it's too late to transfer ones we have into deeper pots?
No.
They're probably about 6 months old.
No, I don't.
Yeah. I wonder. That would be interesting to try. You'd have to dig a deeper hole. Oh yeah,
in general, taking cuttings, the cutting method for propagation reduces the ability for the plant to produce a taproot, right? Because it's growing only adventitious roots. So in general, cutting propagation creates more poor root systems than, for example, growing a seedling like they might do in other areas. Having whatever natural rooting systems occurring early on stay extant, and then putting a graft onto that plant. So you're always going to have weaker roots when you're doing cuttings, but of course it's an easier method to preserve the genetics.
With that variety that you had discussed earlier, I think it was Spider that they're using as, so is that from seed then?
No, it is. It's also cutting.
Okay.
But that was disease resistant.
But it's disease resistant.
Yes,
Yeah, I was just curious.
resistant
Yeah,
to
I figured it
any
was
soil
probably.
pathogen, and I don't know about nematodes, but and a wide variety of soil types.
Yeah.
And wet or dry conditions. They just
That's
found it
super
to be the
interesting.
most suitable rootstock.
I was wondering that as we were, one of the ones down here that looks pretty good. I was like, gosh, I wonder if this would make a good rootstock, and if anyone
You have
grafts. No, I don't have it, but I'll show you the one I was talking about that I was curious curious about.
But what Russ said is absolutely true, and that's what most tree fruits at citrus, and they all start with seedlings of specific species, like Hinaran, for example, for citrus, because it's got virus tolerance. And you grow a seedling with a deep taproot system, you graft on top of that. And you can probably do that with Protea, with Leucospermum, if you want to grow seedlings, but it's
A lot of work.
It's not an industry practice I'm aware of anywhere in the world where Protea is grown. If they do graft, it's always on Spider. You know.
Yeah, I bought 4 from Coal farmers, and they're all grafted.
Oh, interesting.
Really?
Yeah, I asked them who the farmer was. They said they didn't know the person who was working that day.
Oh.
They get their stuff from Ali Mini.
Ah.
Maybe they get other. Oh, that's good.
That's super interesting.
I don't. I can tell you the varieties that I got though later. But the Joy one that you showed earlier, that's the one that died first for me. But
Oh, I want that one. It's so pretty. It's the ones at Coal, so they're labeled. They tell you what the variety names are. Oh, good. I've been wondering because I like that one.
My wife went and bought one a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because it's her name.
Oh.
And she had one named
funny.
for her. I named it, of course,
years
and years ago, and she lost it. She paid $25 for a 4-inch pot.
I know. I saw them and I was like, oh, should I buy one? God, it's so expensive though. Sorry, I didn't do it.
So for the sake of timing, maybe we should get started on some of the varieties that we're thinking of. So let's. Do
you want to really quick talk about pruning?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, just because we're standing right by the ones that I pruned. And then really quick about disease too. And then I feel like we've covered most of the agronomic stuff. And if you have other questions, we can have side conversations after we look at the flowers or whatever. So I started pruning right here. I ended up stopping because we have a lot of disease pressure in the field right now. You guys will see it as we start walking through. And I didn't want to spread anything around. But Ken had mentioned earlier breeding to have a little bit better airflow through the plants. And some of these are really bushy. I think it's actually my fault. I think it was a fertilizer issue. But you can, if you guys want to come over, you can like get in here and look at these. But so I think I over applied nitrogen. We were trying to figure out what was going on. We were seeing some deficiency symptoms, and we thought it was fertilization. I did something that I should have known better, fertilized before doing my tissue sample, and got my tissue sample after the fact, and the nitrogen was too high. So I think what it caused was a lot of additional branching. So you'll see that especially in this row. We can walk down this row and look some more, but there's a whole bunch of really like tiny little branches that are starting to flower. And this is what we were talking about when we said marketable yield versus like total flower yield. So like I couldn't harvest this. You know, it's very pretty, but another thing is, and I don't know if this is a question for Ken. I don't know if this is caused by fertilizer or if it's a characteristic of this particular variety, but some of these I don't know, necks, there's probably a better term for it, are kind of long, and I noticed that they can more easily break off than when they were shorter, and I feel like they've gotten longer. So I don't know if that's also potentially from over-fertilization. So I just wanted to point that out really quick, and then just discuss how I did the pruning here. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm hoping to learn from people who do, but I did a little bit of research, and I think hopefully I did it right. But we took out some branches, tried to cut, you know, pretty close to flush with the main branches that we wanted to keep. If you cut higher up, you'll cause it to tiller, or I don't think it's called tillering because it's not grass, branch. It'll cause it to branch more. So I was cutting it close to the edge like that, or for those of you that can't see it, like that, yeah. Antlers. Yeah. I like that better than tillers. Yeah, so that's it with pruning. And I think also, so these are about 2.5 years old. At 1.5 years old, I had a newborn, so I wasn't out here pruning anything, but that probably would have been the ideal time. I think about a year ago would have been the time to start pruning them. At this point, we're like playing catch up, and we already are seeing a lot of disease problems. One of the things I also noticed, Russ, in your data today, it was really helpful to see those graphs, at least for me, because I saw every spring a dip in terms of plant health. So I'm curious if it's just the moisture, the heat, like just humidity in general is just causing the fungal spores to go nuts. Yeah,
that's what I was predicting.
Yeah, so we're seeing it again right now. I mean, it started kind of dropping off in April, and this is, unfortunately, this is kind of like the worst they've looked in the last like 6 months. So sorry guys, but but it's good to see it, because then at least you'll know if you see it on your plants, you'll know what it is. So, or you'll know that you have it, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So,
do you feel like you got the fertilization schedule down?
So I found a publication out of San Diego that recommended a certain amount of nitrogen per year based on the age of the crop. And so that's what I was following. And I think it's too high for us. I don't know. It just seemed like it was too much. This last round that I did, I don't think it was nitrogen that it needed. I think it might be calcium. We're still kind of trying to figure that out. So we might actually end up applying a foliar product and see how that does. Also, in terms of the disease pressure, up until now, we have not sprayed any fungicides on the plants, but we're at the point now where I think we're going to have to probably do that to keep it under control, because I do notice that we're starting to lose plants, or we might lose plants, especially as we go down the hill. They start to look less and less healthy down there.
You're spraying for phytophthora?
You know, no. So I actually just got some disease results back, and I'm still trying to make sense of them. And I think there's a lot of like ongoing research on protea diseases. I'm not totally sure. There's like 9 different fungal pathogens that they isolated off these plants, and I don't know which ones are causing it, or if it's a combination of them, or I'm not really sure. So we're still trying to kind of figure that out. So all I know is that IPM is huge. So pruning to get better airflow through the plant. Something we didn't do that I think may have been bad for us this season too. When I was coming in and harvesting the flowers, I was not sanitizing my clippers between plants. And I'm sure I went to unhealthy plants and then went to a healthy plant after that. And again, I know better, but I didn't do it. And I think I might have spread things around a little bit too. So with pruning and with harvesting, just sanitizing your tools is super important. So I guess crop health, sanitizing your tools, and making sure you have good airflow are 3 things I can think of off the top of my head that could help you probably avoid having to use a lot of fungicides. Yeah, and then the airflow, I mean, the wind, really strong wind is not good, but airflow is good. So just, I mean, generally speaking, I don't know from a protea standpoint, I'm just assuming, but I know for most crops, like if you have a lot of fungal issues, airflow is good, yeah. So, yeah.
What about insects?
I've seen some insect damage, and you know, I'm not sure if I think it might be rose beetle, I'm not positive. We never bothered to try and ID it because it was never substantial on any variety except for one down here that we'll see. And I just was like, you know, this variety just does not look good here, so I don't even care. So, but we probably should figure out what it is. But it's, I've never seen any damage significant enough to warrant like having to spray insecticide or anything like that. And I don't think we would, because there are some that don't have pest pressure at all. And so why grow something that you have to put more effort into?
Most growers, this is worldwide, don't have much of a problem with insect pests. Mm-hmm. There's a natural toxin that's in the foliage that insects seem to just avoid.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hybrid 88, Jacqueline Louise, correct? And so this is the yellow flower Ken was talking about. It grows on the ground. And you can really kind of see this one is doing that. We actually have some plants down at the very bottom of the farm, and they're probably, I don't know, well, these are spaced 5 feet apart. Those are spaced 10 feet apart, and they're almost touching. So they're a little bit older, but I mean, these really grow out wide. But they are starting to grow up. So in the beginning, they kind of go and they're kind of like sitting on their sides, and then have started to go up more recently. So
they're not rooting from where they're touching.
No, not that I've seen. I wonder if they could.
Oh, it's possible. I've seen some root that way. But when you say they're growing on their side, it's not this kind of growing on the side so much. This one, as the one that we discussed down there earlier, just didn't have a strong enough root system to hold it up. But hybrid 88, even if you've got it, you know, perfectly vertical in the ground, its new growth for the first year sprawls. And it's not because it fell over, it just naturally sprawls. And the second year and then beyond that is when you'll start getting more vertical growth.
Does anybody trellis them?
I have never heard of anybody trellising these. Actually, there's a lady in France who does some work on protein nutrition. She does it all in greenhouses, all in pots, and I think she may have trellised her pots, her plants, but I think that was just because she wanted to get a higher density of plants on her greenhouse benches.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's not a production system. But as far as the production system goes, I'm not aware of anyone that's trellised them.
Okay.
But why not? Because people are trellising avocados now and oranges and
yeah, that was what we were originally going to do here was
mangoes
trellis mango. Yeah.
And you really can boost the yields. You can increase the surface area where the fruits are born, and you can really increase your yields. But you also increase your labor a lot. It's really labor intensive to trellis plants. But
might be more of a novelty kind of thing.
I don't know. Trellis in the east, in the northeast, trellis apples and pears are becoming a pretty normal thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't have any flowers on this one right now, but there are flowers down in the lower field. So I might actually later on go cut one and bring it up, or I don't know if we want to trek all the way down there, but I can show you guys what the flower looks like. These ones don't have any currently. So this one is 74, which we talked a lot about. BRANDI de la CRUZ. This is the one that Ken was saying you can't grow enough of. The really beautiful plant, for whatever reason, this one over here is just kind of going off. So this flower is a little past its prime here. So I was mentioning earlier, I come in and dehead them every like 3-4 days. So it's fairly easy. You just sort of like pop it off and toss it on the ground. And you do that so that, oh, sorry. Don't do that.
She went right to it too. She's like, oh, it's like someone hit the piano.
So I'll show you on this plant why you do that. So there's a good example right here. During the flower season, I was you guys are so funny. I can get another one if you want. But yeah, so you can end up with sometimes 2 and some varieties even more of these, you know, heads on the same branch, which is kind of cool, but I don't think that's how people sell them. So I would normally come in, and if I saw 2 of these little ones, I would just sort of pop one off, or sometimes even just pop it off at this stage and let one flower go. And then let's see, so this was a really good plant specifically because we got really long straight stems. So this is a decent example. And I mean, we were getting even longer stems, even straighter than this. I mean, they were stick straight, just completely straight up and down. And yeah, probably I would say 70% or so of the yield that we harvested this season came from a few of the varieties out here, and this is one of them. This one was just a prolific producer once it started flowering. A lot of the other plants flowered sooner, and this one took a really long time. I was going like, what is going on? Are we not going to get anything this season? And then once they started, it was just nonstop. So yeah, this was a great one for us this year.
That's the Brandi.
This is the Brandi de la CRUZ, yeah. Very good plant. And you also don't really see, it's hard because I haven't shown you a plant that does have disease symptoms, so you can't really compare it, but I mean, relatively speaking, they look very healthy. So from what I can tell, they don't have a lot of whatever this disease issue is that we're having. I don't really see it that much in this variety, so it's really hardy.
And you don't have any problems with the holes and stuff like that?
You know, it's interesting because I don't know anything about growing flowers. I'm coming from a world of food production, so I didn't even know if I was supposed to strip the leaves off. I asked someone who told me, you know, what they prefer, and I don't know if different people have different preferences. So what I was doing is we would harvest a flower, and if there wasn't a lot of damaged leaves, I'd take like maybe that much and strip it off and leave a little bit at the top. But some of them, you know, like if I could get away with pulling a few off so you couldn't see it, you know, then I would do that. I don't know if that's right. I mean, I'm not sure
You're
what.
talking about doing that in the field or after?
Oh, no, after harvesting. Yeah, Ken can talk more about that. I don't know if I was doing it right. I just did what seemed good.
You follow the instructions of the person who's buying them from you.
Yeah, exactly. What do you want? And I'll do it.
That's exactly right. It wasn't original criteria, and I didn't put it on the list of objectives today when we started up, you know, what's the criteria for breeding. But over the course of a few years, the growers told me that they want me to start to include in the criteria, how do they put it, strippability. Okay, they wanted easier to strip, and if you get a bunch of cut flowers of 20 different hybrids, some of them you hold it near the top and you strip it down. It's very, very easy, and they all come off and there's no damage to the stem. And others are hard to strip off, and you have to end up individual leaves pulling them off, and the petiole is so tightly adheres to the stem that you pull some of the stem tissue off. And they didn't like that because it reduced shelf life, and didn't occur to me because I've never been a florist. I've never worked with the cut flowers. So that did become a factor. We don't know anything about is that a heritable characteristic or not, but we put it in the evaluation for subsequent plants that these strip easily and others don't. So it was something that concerns them. It's not only a time factor, but damage to the stem.
Yeah, I guess another interesting thing. Were you done with that part? Okay, perfect. I don't want to interrupt you.
I'm done when you tell me I'm done.
Okay, you're done. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, that was another thing I didn't realize too. I don't know. You guys might have a lot of experience with flowers. I'm not sure who I'm talking to, but I have none. So this was a learning experience for me. I thought, you go into the field, you harvest, and you're pretty much done. Like, I didn't think about the post-harvest processing part, but actually stripping them can take quite a while. Yeah. So like Ken was saying, these ones strip really easily. Alberto's going to get some clippers, and we can harvest one of these or maybe a couple of these, and if anyone wants to practice it. I don't know how exactly to do it. I just know what I was doing, but basically I was kind of grabbing and then just pulling down along the stem to get the leaves off. And these ones do come off really easily. Some of the other ones, as you pull this, it sort of like strips along the stem. And so that's probably where you run into the vase life issues.
You put them in a fresh bucket of water?
So yeah, I would harvest them, put them in a fresh bucket of water. Most of the time I was harvesting this year, it was raining. So I'd take them up to the deck over there, and up there I would do all the stripping and processing. And then put them back in fresh, new water, because it'd be sometimes a little dirty out here, and then bring them to wherever they were going.
The difficult to strip ones are the ones that take a chunk of the stem with them, leaves an open wound, and that's more water loss.
Is that what they use on roses? Pardon me? Is that what they use on roses, or like would that work with like for taking off the leaves and thorns? They have like a class thing
the
that
thorn.
Oh, I've seen those before. I'd never tried it.
Might work.
I just did them by hand with a glove. But that's a good idea. I saw it in like a Johnny's catalog or something, I think, like a flower stripper or something like that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, does somebody want to try one? I don't know. Sure. I don't know if anyone cares, but it's kind of fun. It's, you know, just to kind of see what it's like.
I didn't catch the bouquet, so.
Yeah. So I was not doing this before, and I don't know if this is the best way to do it or not, but I'm sanitizing the clippers now every time I cut flowers because I just don't know what's going on with the fungal issues yet, so. So I can do that one if you want. Should we keep going down and looking at more of the varieties?
Oh, yeah. It's easy. Okay.
So,
Stick to your soil.
No worries. Yeah. Okay. So so the soil here is I think at least is pretty ideal for growing this crop. It's low in phosphorus. I think we're somewhere I don't know. We're somewhere between 40 and 60. We'd have to look at the soil report, but either way, the phosphorus is pretty low here. The drainage is really good. Although we have clay in this soil, it's really high in iron oxide, so it forms these chemical bonds that essentially make the soil drain like a sand. So the drainage is really good, the phosphorus is low, the nutrition is pretty low. It's not ideal for like vegetables and things like that, but it's what these like. So we didn't have to do a whole lot here in terms of amending or anything like that to get these to grow. And then we also, I kind of mentioned this, we didn't till the soil. What we did, the drainage is good, but there could be compaction from just historical land use. So we dug holes 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet with equipment, and then put everything kind of back in and planted them. Don't like that. We're walking along here, it's just really lumpy and bumpy, and it's just not ideal. So over there, we ended up just using a single shank and just ripping one row. So again, a no-till practice, but just to open it up to allow better drainage if there is any compaction. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah, so these ones are really interesting. They are pretty, they open really quickly. They go from this kind of more compact stage to completely open like this in like a day, whereas some of the other ones will sometimes take a few days to start opening. These open really fast. I think they're kind of just like a weird, funky, unique looking flower. I've definitely seen some disease pressure, pest pressure on these plants. I didn't harvest a ton of them, again, because the yield was just really low. When people were requesting flowers from us, I was trying to give them at least 10 of one variety. If they wanted 50, then I might give them 10, 10, 10, you know, of 5 different varieties. Unless I was making bouquets, but the bouquets I still needed at least a dozen. So I didn't harvest very many of these for that reason. There just weren't ever enough on the plant at one time to make that work out, the numbers work out. Okay, so this one, I talked a little bit about this when we were doing the presentation. I really like the leaf structure on this. I don't know if this is something that's desirable from a florist standpoint or not, but I just think they're really cool looking. They also are a really beautiful color when they first start to open. Unfortunately, we have one flower here where you can see the color, but it's kind of a deformed, sad little flower. So, but you can see there this really pretty kind of like, almost like a neon peach color. And then this is a little bit past its prime in terms of the color, but this is the shape of the flower. It's a really nice flower. So I did like working with this one. And I think if you know, looking at it now, like you can see there's definitely, it's trending towards this upright growth. But earlier this season, there was a lot of just sort of sprawling. And so some of these would grow, you know, out to the side, and then the heads would turn. I don't know how else to describe it, but basically you'd end up with a straight stem and then a flower like this. So I didn't use them that much, but it's a beautiful color and it's a nice flower. It'll be interesting to see how it does next season.
626.
Okay, so 626, we harvested a lot of this year. This is probably my favorite of the 600s that we have, or well, there's a couple out here, but this is one of my favorites. It gave nice long stems. A few of the other 600s, the stems seemed a little shorter. It could be the way I was managing the plant. I don't know for sure. But this one seemed to consistently give long stems. And you guys are sort of on that side, so it's hard to see. But if you can come over here, if you're interested, this stem is about that long. So, I mean, we were getting like nice long straight stems from these. And then it's also just a really beautiful color. I like the peach. And it sometimes has these sort of like grayish, almost purple tips. All right, what's that one? So this is 602. Last year, we hadn't seen a lot of the plants flower yet, so we really didn't know which ones we'd want to propagate to grow more of. But we did decide that this one was one that we really loved, so we propagated a whole bunch of this. What I like about this is up until very recently, no disease symptoms. Now you can see I'm going down the road that way, but these are two very healthy plants. The leaves are a really nice green color. I just thought they looked kind of beautiful. The flowers are huge. I mean, yeah, they're just a really, really pretty flower. Pretty big, they open pretty quickly. What I ended up deciding this season is they're not my favorite anymore, mostly because so they're really, really gorgeous, but they open faster than some of the other flowers and they turn sort of like a burnt orange color. And this is just a personal preference. I just don't find it as beautiful as some of the other ones. I think some of the oranges and peaches that we have up here are a lot prettier, but I don't know, some people probably love it, and I still do love it, and it's a very healthy plant, so we're still going to grow more of these. Yeah.
So we asked, which variety was this?
This is 602. Yeah.
Jamie, did any perform kind of better down here? Like, do the varieties change with slope, or are they all like variety per row? So like as far as variables, knowing so like what might perform in like a heavier clay soil, low drainage, because here's low drainage. Right.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I mean, in an ideal scenario, if we were setting this up to evaluate the plants and take out all of the field variability, we'd completely randomize the field, but that'd be so hard to manage. And we don't have the same number of plants of all the different varieties. So some of them up there, you probably saw we had like 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 of some of the varieties up there. Down here, this entire row is 602. Sorry, I should have given that orientation before we started, so it's a little bit confusing if you don't know that. But so up there, there are sections where we've got like 3, 4, 5 plants, you know, of different varieties. Oh, yes, you have a map. There you go.
I think we all got the map.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go then. Yeah. Oh, yeah, no worries. No, India doesn't have a map. But yeah, so, and then some of them we have complete rows. There's definitely field variability. The lower field down here where the plants are the oldest, they look the worst. And I think it's because it's just an area of settlement of soil and water and everything. So they don't love it down there. I think the drainage is not as good. And the guinea grass is just prolific, and I think it causes problems for the plants. They've looked a lot healthier since we got rid of the guinea grass. So yeah.
Do they all need full sun? Like if you were to plant wind block here and some got shade, would they not thrive?
I think from what I've read, I think they prefer full sun for the yield. I don't know if that matters. I mean, I don't know if they would grow well in shade. They just might not yield as much. They probably still grow okay, but I don't know. Yeah. They probably also need, for the amount of wind we get up here, we really need to block this side and do the same for over there. I think the windbreaks are kind of coming in. It's a mixture of the koa and the panax and then some eucalyptus. They'll eventually get tall enough to have more of an impact, but I think windbreaks are pretty important if you've got as much wind as we do. So.
Yeah,
okay. So this is 620. It's kind of similar to 626 and 590, I feel like, in terms of the flower shape and color. It's a little bit smaller and it turns a little bit more of an orangey color versus the peach kind of color of some of those other ones. You can see here it starts out really cool looking though. It's got these sort of like purple tips in the middle. I know I harvested a lot of 626. I think I harvested a decent amount of 620 and 590, but I think 626 was what I ended up going to more frequently than the other two. And I mentioned those three together just because the flowers are all really similar. So, okay, so this is 583. I really love the flower, and I'm actually glad there's one here to show right now, because the flower itself is beautiful, but the plant has just been getting just hammered from the beginning. They just have never looked good here, unfortunately. So this was one I definitely don't think that will grow here again. Whatever fungal pathogens we have, they seem to just be prolific on this particular variety. So the flower is gorgeous, but it doesn't do well here. Yeah. And we've got 2 rows of them.
It's got 9 different species in its background.
Yeah, it doesn't know what to do.
Totally confused.
It's a really beautiful flower, though. I did harvest a lot of these this season. There were at least a few points in time where I had enough, like 10 or more, where I could, you know, harvest them and sell them in a group, like I was mentioning earlier. So we did sell some, but yeah, we probably won't expand upon it. There's just too much disease pressure. So we've got 2 more to look at. This is 679. Right now there's no flowers to look at, but it's really similar to the red that was up here. If a couple of you were standing with me when I pointed it out, that has a really heavy head, and it's just a really gorgeous flower. I harvested a lot of those this season off of these plants. Actually, not a lot. There were a few here and there, not very many. But yeah, it's a really beautiful flower, and they're not doing particularly well, and I don't know if it's because of their location in the field, or if it's just, you know, the variety itself. So I'm interested to potentially take some of the ones down here that aren't doing as well up there and see if they perform any better. And then there's one more up there we can talk about if you guys are interested. All right, so this is the last one. This is 590. Similar to the 626 and the 620. I really like these ones. It's a really pretty peach color. The plants right now look a little funky, and I think this is where fertilization comes into play and how it can impact different plants in different ways. I don't know for sure, and this might be specific to this variety, but there's a whole lot of branching, or what did you call it, Ken? Antlers or something? Antlers, yeah. There's a lot of branching on these, and there's teeny tiny little like short stems that are maybe this big that look like they're about to flower. So it could be that we over fertilized, or it could just be time of year or this variety, or just that it needs to be pruned more than other varieties. And if that's the case, I probably won't grow it because I don't want to grow anything that requires a whole lot of work. So yeah, that's it.